Hey everybody, good morning and welcome to the DBIP Group Innovators Live Q&A, your daily live cast, bringing you guys intellectual property content every day of the week, trying to give you guys useful information on patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. Today is an unusual episode because we have a very, very special guest. Her name is Diane Ram, and she's starting a nonprofit organization that has a very, very creative way of addressing conservation, trying to attack it at the source. So rather than try to explain it myself, let's bring Diane on so that she can tell us all about her nonprofit. Hi, Diane.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, you're doing something that I think is really, really fascinating. And when I met you at first, what I could tell right away was that you have an incredible origin story. Before you get into that, though, why don't you tell us a little bit about your nonprofit?
Nonprofit. We became a nonprofit, Mavericks Wave Tribes United, December 15th of 2020. And you think,
Super fresh.
yes, it's super fresh, but it's been in the works and in creation for 3.5 years. I don't think we realize how long people, work on something before it comes out on the market. So
You'd probably been working on it your whole life, if you're being real, though.
thank
You just
you.
didn't know.
That's a profound statement, and you're absolutely right. Yes.
S- so what's your take on conservation?
If you were to ask me, I really people spend their whole lives studying conservation, but for me, it's simple things and having sustainable living and being able to give back to our children's children, give them something that we had where it was clean living, clean water, um, clean beaches. So there's too much plastics and rubbish in our life where it's everywhere, and you have to look at it and say, wow, it's kind of like the big elephant in the room. So
Mhm.
if you were to say if I have any formalized training in conservation, I don't. This is really grassroots for me.
Is that even the right word that I should be using when I talk about your organization? I almost feel like there's maybe even a better word.
You know what, if there was one word I would say, it's just following your, we're here to do, I'm not going to get spiritual on you, but I feel like
You're
we
allowed to.
well, we have our own work, like we have a job and everything, but also there's something deeper that I feel like each of us has a special calling to do. And it doesn't come up and say, this is going to be what your real mark on the world is. And if you want to leave a mark, then that seed is within each and every one of us. Um, you know, like take for example your company. You've been you help us identify who we are and help us brand ourselves. We know nothing about it, so there's people that in special pockets making
Mm,
big changes, right?
thank you, thank you. Thanks for appreciating us.
Thank you.
So I guess the one of the things that I would imagine is incredibly challenging is that people are more and more short-sighted, I feel like. And people want things right away, and there's less and less interest in wanting to think about the long term. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that mindset? Because I'd imagine that a lot of your work is trying to address that very issue, that very problem.
In my small team of people, mindset is a word that comes up several times in the discussion, and that was the big we were collaborating with people, and we've landed with an amazing young man in Fiji who's, while I'm thinking of this company, he's thinking about waste cleanup on the island. He did a proposal and he's been looking for funding, and finally we just like ships connecting in the night, right? And his whole thing is mindset. And I'm thinking, I'm like a bull in a china shop. Get to it, get it done, forget about mindset. He keeps reminding me we've got to get them where they're at. We've got to meet them where they're at. And that's a big word. It's a big word I think everyone's grappling with. But it's slow little changes. And I think it's connecting the dots visually so people can get, you're eating fish all the time. That's your main food. But if you're cutting fish open and there's loaded with plastics in their belly, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big connection, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how this all came about? I mean, I know this story already. I've already had the benefit of hearing it. But for our audience, it'd be really cool if you could retell it.
Well, it was 3.5 years ago, going on 4, and I had Fiji's my home, and I had had a tremendous loss in my life, and I needed to just decompress. So I went home, and you go
Were
home
you
and
going back often already?
yes, every
Okay.
couple of years, I would go home, and I was sitting on the beach, and a beach that I had grown up on where there was nothing on there. um, when I went back, there were two hotels, a huge intercontinental
Wow.
and a huge one, and then another hotel, which was a local kind of hangout resort.
And
So,
these are Waste City organizations, right? I'm sure.
well, I'm not going to be. I don't want to attach anything to their branding. Um, what I saw, and I don't say it's necessarily from that, but what I saw washing up on the beach every day was just things like toothpaste,
Oh,
PET bottles, the lids of bottles, um, all kinds of plastic rubbish.
wow.
And so I would take my bag like I do in Half Moon Bay, California, and pick up rubbish, and while I'm walking the dogs, and I thought, you know what, I need to pick up this stuff. So each morning I would go out and there'd be more rubbish, and you pick up and you clean up and there'd be more rubbish. And I'm thinking, where is this coming from? So one day took the bus into town and hung around at the local shops. And as the bus was leaving town, there was a bank on one of the villages, and all this rubbish was thrown over the bank. So when the tides rise, they back up the rivers, and the rivers take this out to sea. And
Wow.
I was shocked. I was, it's something that you see that's so hideous you can't unsee it. I've not been able to unsee that. And then it started to grow in my mind. Okay, you know, what do you do? And I don't think I'm very good at you know, how would I say, working on it. For me, I need to see changes, and I need to see changes fast. So I decided to start the nonprofit.
Okay.
It took me 3.5 years to get the courage to do it, and a lot of self-reflection, because it's not a lot of self-doubt. So it's not an easy thing to step into a company, because people go through these questions.
Well,
And
especially at this at the scale of the mission of your mission. I mean, that's I mean, that's a huge undertaking.
it's insane. It's literally insane if you're going to label it. So yeah. So
So
that's
so in those years, what I mean, what were you doing to figure out? Because I mean, obviously, I think it's about okay, well, okay, I know I need to start a nonprofit. That sounds like that's what you realize. But then it's like, what does that mean? What does that look like? What is that nonprofit? How did that start? What's it first focus on? So was that what those first couple of years? Is that what they were?
the first couple of years. What it really was is you having dreams of, you're dreaming about, you're seeing those images, you're dreaming about rubbish, and every time you see, news about plastic and pollution, it comes up. And then I decided, I really need a life coach, because
Ah,
and I got a life coach, and the coach was like, you have to do this. And I'm like, but I feel so I said, I feel like this is too much. It's a big sacrifice on your life. And so 3 years of talking to a life coach, and once you make that decision and to jump off the cliff, then things start to happen.
gravity. You're just going.
Yeah, it's like you come into our lives, you get the right attorney to help you set up, and then it just grows, it rolls, you become like a ball rolling down the hill.
Well, and what your message is so powerful and important that I mean, I imagine that every person that you talk to, you're going to touch them in some way.
I you know I hope so. You've got organizations like PETA and stuff, and sometimes that stuff is hard to watch. But it's the little things like when you start to become more and more and more aware, you're ordering your box of stuff from QVC, or the cosmetic industry is terrible about this, the extra packaging. Do it, and by the time you get this little, cause
Oh, I know. You create so much trash, rubbish, and yeah, and bad stuff too, like plastics and styrofoams.
yes, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's crazy when you start to look at your packaging and saying, "Wow, this has got to stop." And one thing rolls into another, and then you've got a full on tackling of the people that deliver your stuff. I mean, it just goes on, so you really have to stay focused. Yeah.
So where are you starting? What if you had to say like a place that you're starting? So it sounds like close to home,
Yes.
maybe. Okay.
Fiji is kind of like the hub of the Pacific, and so Fiji's home. I know the people. I mean, the connections. I grew up there, and if we can make impactful changes there, then we can hit the other islands of Tonga, Samoa, Vanuatu. These islands are at serious risk from just the global impact of climate change. There, if you take Fiji for example, Fiji's been hit in the last 4 years. I think it's with three. I don't have my full facts. Category 5 hurricanes,
Wow.
which are devastating. I mean, and it's amazing that they have not had more you know um, loss of life than they have. They're an amazing country, they're resilient, but these islands are taking the brunt of what the world has collectively done, and how we've impacted this planet.
Wow. So what's the biggest threat to your mission? At least in the context of Fiji.
um to be
Is it
honest,
is it
and
tourism? Because it sounds to me like it'd be tourism.
I don't want to say it's tourism. Tourism brings a lot of money in. I think it's more um it, I would have to say, I'm not going to label any entity, but I'm going to have to say it's the mindset. It's our
Mindset. Yeah.
mindset. That's the
Okay.
biggest threat. And being apathetic to what's happening. And not just for Fiji, but the tourists, all of them as well. And education, it needs to be a powerful tool, and the message needs to get through. Um, you talk about branding. I'm realizing the importance of branding, and
Oh,
how
it's
you're
so
gonna.
critical.
Yes. And I only know this much of it, and I'm realizing it's like, you've got to really get on top of getting the message across. So it's being apathetic, and it's the mindset. I go back to each of us as individuals, and waking up to awareness, and that's what it is, just being aware. There's a lot of things behind the scene that we don't know and we don't get. But we have the power. The people have the power because they drive the economy, right?
Oh
People
yeah.
don't realize. Yeah.
They're the ones that make the decisions on what to consume.
Yes. Yes. That's a biggie.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. I mean, well, I just like how we came back to mindset.
I told you that was a
That's
big issue for us.
yeah, yeah. So what are so is that so I almost think of it more as education then. Is that okay, okay.
Yes, yes. And um like I said, what now that we're once we got started, and once we started, when we were complete with Mavericks Wave as an entity, and then we connected with you to brand, and we took a long time to get the logo, because the logo has energy with it. We took a long time for that, and once we got to that part, then things start to come up through social media, which is an amazing way of connecting the world. And our whole program for this year is set because through social media we met someone that is doing exactly on the ground. He has a plan fully implemented of what our whole vision was 3 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah,
So he has the blueprint for you.
he has the blueprint. and he just didn't have anyone to fund it. And so
Ah.
it was just a brief meeting on the social media. He posted picking up rubbish every 3 months, and I asked him a question, and then it exploded. So
Well, it's like you say, right? I mean, it's about attacking mindset on the ground level, and if you do that with enough people and connect with enough people,
yes, and
and
you'd
the
be
beauty of
surprised.
social media is that if you can get on millions of people's feeds,
Yes,
possibly.
hopefully, hopefully,
So is that your content strategy? Is that what you're going to be doing? So you're going to be hosting these seminars and then posting about them and providing a lot of informational content?
No,
Oh.
no, no, no. We have he has a structure in place.
Oh, wow.
There's a hierarchical system that's connected into the government, but also within the tribes of Fiji. And
Ah.
they have they've had this structure in place. And so what he is a provincial administrator for the government, and he's going to be going into the villages and setting up a plan. It's a pilot for 58 villages. And what he's doing is he's going into there, giving an awareness talk about rubbish. And
Ah.
then
So
he's
the infrastructure is already basically there.
all
Wow.
set,
Oh,
all set.
cool.
We're looking at maybe in 4 months to see the results of our pilot, which we're trying to launch April 15th.
Okay. So can you talk about that? So how are you going to uh, add value to what he's already doing or what he's been doing?
He hasn't been able to do, they've done it in
Oh.
one village. He hasn't been able to do it in this. He's head of this province, which is 6 districts, 58 villages. And we're talking about maybe 5,000 people. And the area is 2/3 of the second largest island in Fiji, which is Lakandrove.
Wow.
Yes, I mean, this is big. And what he's doing, he's going to be going in, but they didn't have money to fund this project. He
But
pitched
you're going to
it.
be able to provide that.
That's what I'm going to do.
That's amazing.
That, yes.
Can you
So,
talk about the challenges of that? I mean, because that's got to be incredibly difficult.
um, the challenges of getting the funding, or the challenges of what he's trying to do.
Of the funding. How has that been?
We haven't. We're just doing our memorandum of understanding,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and then I'm going to put it out to through social media. I'm going to put it out. In fact, I'm not worried about the money for some odd reason. I just have a feeling that we're going to be fine with it. Um, my motto is, we can't get it started. I'll start it my damn self, right? Um, but we want to put it out on social media to people we know. I tried to go through corporate, but we're too small. We're not recognized yet.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so we have to
Well,
go
we'll
through.
give you a lot of shout outs on our social media, and we'll
Thank you.
yeah, yeah. If you give us your donation page, we'll shout it out too.
Thank you.
100%. Yeah, anything we can do to help you.
Yes, we have. Honestly, I will tell you, I'm blown away because I didn't think that it would be so easy to connect with someone that would manage our whole mission, that they had the blueprint. I never expected it. And it's like, wow, we've struck gold. Um,
So, are these talks? Are they? What's their format? Does he just go and give seminars?
no, when he goes in the first round, everyone in each village, if you're not working or if you're not in school, everyone will attend assembly, everyone in the village.
Ah,
And
okay,
he'll do a complete half day awareness training of rubbish.
okay.
And then he'll,
So, is it like talking about the environmental impact of different materials? Is that sort of the idea?
he's we haven't followed, we've gone through the structuring of it, but his
Ah,
idea is to see how it impacts them, each village individually. They have a
oh,
conservation, yes, and each village has their own conservation plan. And so we're not giving them anything. We're asking them to take ownership and add this to their plan, and how it can be added, how they can work this into their,
interesting.
yeah.
So it's also about accountability.
Yes, it's
Ah.
ownership. They're the stakeholders of their home, right?
Oh,
This
I
is
love what you're doing. I love this. This is great.
yeah,
Because sorry to interrupt you, but I just feel like a lot of what I see around me, and especially what's been going on, I think, and one of the things that's been a real issue politically and socially for our country is people don't want to be accountable. People don't want to take ownership. Um, People want to blame. Um, People just want to avoid responsibility wherever they can. And this is like totally the opposite, where it's like, no, the if our communities are polluted, it's because of me.
yeah, yeah. And if we don't do this, what are the consequences? I mean, and when you think about your family, and you think, I want to leave something for my grandchildren so that we don't have to worry. And that's not saying that we're not going to worry, but they have at least a chance of the things that I saw. I saw an amazing, beautiful country. I grew up in the most amazing country and naturally beautiful. And I'd like for them to be able to go, what is it when tourists come and sit on the beach and you've got rubbish all along the beach? It's like, oh,
Yeah, it's sad. Yeah.
sad. And it's everywhere.
S- So what was that like for you was there a year when you went back that you especially noticed it, or has it was it gradual?
I especially noticed it when I went 3.5 years ago. I
Okay,
really especially
because that
noticed
was
it
the
then.
spark. You were walking with your friend on the beach, right?
Right, right. I especially noticed it then. But
Okay.
years prior, you notice the changes through, the logging industry, where the reef that I grew
Uh,
up, the reef died because whenever it rained, you'd have mud come down from through the rivers and hit the oceans, and the reefs are a big part of their their livelihood. The reefs are major protection for all these, um, um, the ocean. I mean, it just you're
the
talking
ecosystem
fish.
of the ocean,
Yeah,
sure.
the ecosystem. And so the reefs are dying, and people are working hard to try to bring them back or to preserve the amount of reef loss that we have. It's a lot of different things that you just see and you notice, but you see it every day and you really become apathetic to it. It's just not catching, you know. So
Mm.
when for if you're gone and you come back and you see it, it's like, oh my God, it's more apparent to you because you see the changes in a different way.
Did your friend notice a change in you that day? I'm just curious. I love these
Um,
origin stories. Those kind of weird questions.
you know, how would I say? Um, Fijian people are unique because they're not a lot about talking, so you could be walking
Uh,
and it's not. And for her and I were walking on the beach, I'm like, wow, look at all of this. And she's like, yeah, man. And sounds sounds really funny, but and then I said, we need to do something about it. And I said, what about a nonprofit? And she goes, I think that would be a great idea.
Mm.
And I said, okay, let's do it. And that was the extent of the conversation.
But that's all it needed. That's all the
Yes.
kindling it needed.
Yep. Yep.
The fire was lit.
Yes. And I sent her something. It was the process again, I would say, is sitting there thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it rather than just getting into it.
Yeah. So when in the ideal situation where you take a group of people and you are able to educate them and help them understand accountability, how is that going to translate into what you're trying to achieve? And or is that still being worked out? Does that make
Um,
sense? Is
Ask
it
in a different way.
so what I'm understanding is that based on their better sense of accountability, they're going to make different purchasing decisions as consumers.
Oh, that's a very good question. Um, that's a very good question because we had a meeting last night going over the last bits of the MOU, and the conversation was, you can make better soaps,
Mm,
with all the natural stuff. So why are you going to the store to buy a bar of soap $2 for a palm olive when you can make your own and then enjoy. You can make your own better,
Right.
And so,
And put the
yeah,
scents that you want and really tailor it to what you want.
do what you want, because I love going to the farmers market, and I go crazy over natural stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so we had that conversation. The other conversation is they're complaining, not complaining, but they're highlighting diabetes as being a major, major, major problem. So, you go back to Coke, and looking at, a can of Coke, and you're thinking there's 16 teaspoons of sugar in
Yeah,
there.
isn't that insane to think about? I mean, I just
Right. And, people are unconscious about it. I loved my caramel macchiatos. I really loved them. But I was like, okay, you know what? You really need to work on, your management of what you're consuming. And so what I did is I did a calorie count for a week. And I realized a lot of my calories were consumed by the macchiato
a
per day.
macchiato, yeah.
And that changed my mindset to make me give it up. And I and I
Mm.
I gave them up. And it wasn't about the money. It was about, holy mother, I'm having a lot of calories, and then I have to scrunch on a salad for dinner. So that wasn't going to fly with me anymore.
But you had to realize that what the calorie count was in each drink first.
Yes, yes,
That was
and
key.
that's what it took, because otherwise I was like, I'm going to have my macchiato regardless. So, and that's what we're trying to work on, is he keeps bringing home mindset. He said that's what he's afraid of, is how hard it would be to that's the big challenge. I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful, and I don't know, call me romantic, but I'm hopeful that, if we sat down and said, okay, let's look around and say, is this what you want? Um, really, having pride in your environment. It's something I work on. I'm really struggling because, I like to buy a lot of stuff, and it's like, ooh, now the feeling is getting to be
Sure.
like, did you really need that? Where is it going when you don't want it? So
Right.
I hope I'm answering your questions.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I mean, it's again, it's such a titanic problem that you're addressing. So, but it needs to be addressed, right? Because like you say, it's like you think about your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, your great great grandchildren. What
Yes,
world are they going to be stepping into?
yes. And you think, these companies didn't evolve overnight. If you look at McDonald's started with one McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
These companies didn't start overnight, and so we need to hurry along because of again, but little things that can make changes in terms of, okay, take one village that's probably on the coast, and you say, you don't know which way the hurricane's going to go, from you can't predict that, but you can start giving them the right tools to build the right homes
Mhm.
to prepare for these things, and
Right.
if it's one village at a time, then that's where you start, and then they can affect 10 people. I'm in the power of 10, and then they can affect 10 people.
Right. No, exactly. Because then they'll go home and they'll share what they learned from you at with their friends, with their family. Right. Sure.
Right. And failure is not an option, so let's just get that straight.
It's absolutely not. You only get one Earth.
Yes. Mm.
So what's the number one thing that you just love to walk and see when you're back home? Is there in terms of nature, is it the ocean? Is it the beach? Is it the sand? Is it the feel of the sand on your feet? What for you? What is like the one thing if you had to pick one thing?
Okay, so when you get there and you walk out on the beach, and I would encourage you to go to the outer islands, because when you're sitting on this beach, the sands are just yellow. They're beautiful, the color of sand. They're just clean sand.
Oh, wow.
And then the waters, yep. Then and you're sitting there, and the waters are crystal clear. And I
That's
mean,
amazing.
they had the clearest waters in the world. And then you see the most, I mean, the ranges of blue through that ocean.
Mm.
It's unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable. The South Pacific, and it's something to see. I can't describe it. It's Hawaii is different. I love Hawaii, but Hawaii is very different. You've got
So
one,
for you, it's so it feels like it's almost more visual, but or
yes,
it's a combination. Okay, okay,
it's a
visual. Yeah.
combination. But there's also an of, you know, we were talking about this the other day. There's a you feel the tingling of life in the air.
Ah,
You know,
oh, I
you
love that.
automatic yes, you automatically decompress, and you can feel the vibration of life in the air. It's just everywhere. The colors are brighter, you know. Um, Here we're kind of our environment, and I guess unless you're in the country or something, if you're in the cities, you don't feel that as strong.
Yeah, I think I know what
You
you
know
mean.
you're missing. Yes, yes,
Yeah. So this is kind of an interesting question, and so, and it might be maybe kind of hard for you to answer, but do you think that the a local Fijian would almost take that for granted, being that it's around them all the time? Is that something that you guys deal with, or is it just something that culturally they grow up always appreciating, or is that too much of a generalization?
you know, I think it's if I were to look at my, you know, I would say my brothers and sisters in Fiji, they depend on the land. The
Ah,
land, you know, they depend on the land. They
so it's a different
farm.
mindset entirely.
Yeah, this
Okay,
it's almost like the mindset of the Native American.
okay,
You know, they get up in the morning and they look out over the ocean and they see the changes in the weather and what the weather's going to be like. And do I go fishing today? You know, um, they're very in tune and very in touch with the land. Um, I think maybe the younger generations, you know, might be more westernized and have kind of become, you know, less in touch. Um, but with how climate change has come about and with these hurricanes, I think they're very much aware of how much they need to claim back their lands, meaning claim back the ownership of um, taking care of it, you know, putting moratoriums on the reef where the chief says, okay, when the chief says, it's called tambu, and the chief says, we're not going to 6 months tambu on that reef, no one touches anything on that reef. You don't sneak up and go and fish and get a fish.
uh,
You don't touch it. That's the law, you know, and it's the
wow,
word from the chief. So,
yeah.
yeah,
My perspective must be so strange to you, because I feel like I was looking at more of like a something that needs to be appreciated, but the way you talk about it, it's almost something that we need to coexist with and 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 utilize, and it uses us too. That's
yes,
interesting.
yes. I mean, it's a cycle, and they're very much in the cycle of, you know, taking care of it now. And I don't want to say that these governments, they don't have they're not equipped to deal with the mass amount of rubbish that's being generated on this new lifestyle. They're just overwhelmed, and when you if you really look into some of the islands, they just cannot manage the onslaught of waste.
Wow.
You know, my big picture is that maybe we can visit countries that are doing great, you know, in managing their trash and saying, okay, how can we translate through this out through the Pacific?
Right.
It's a kind of all hands on board with this kind of, you know, with this project.
Yeah. So I have two more questions for you.
Sure.
One is I'm always interested in hearing about maybe moments when you were either through challenges or for whatever reason you were about to quit, but then you didn't. Was there ever a moment in those 3 years when you were working with your life coach where you just thinking, you know what, I'm just gonna throw the towel and go do something else, or was it always just there's no, like, I mean, already said, you kind of already said there's no the, failure isn't an option, but I'm just curious, was there ever a moment for you where you were really struggling to keep going?
pretty much all those 3 years, I'm like, seriously, you're an idiot. What sane person would want to do this? And but I couldn't put it away. I
Yeah,
just could
right.
not put
Just
it
kept coming
down.
up.
Yes, you know.
Uh,
And my coach was like, because it got to the point where I either do this or I just don't have a life. I'll be a bum, and which is just not in me. And what was so funny was the coach was like, seriously, just get to it. And I'm like, but I'm not worthy. And he says, does a hose ask, are you worthy to carry water? Does, someone worthy to carry water? And I'm like, oh my God, we're getting into.
oh wow.
So um it's, yeah, you just either you do it or you don't, but my thing is to stop crying about it, and I couldn't stop crying about it, so I
So
just had
you
to go for it.
yeah, so you did it, and then I love it, snowball, and then now you've got more. I'm sure each person you talk to certainly wants to learn and hear more about it, and I mean it's so critical. So
It is, and I have a lot of learning to do. Like I said, I know nothing about conservation. There's a class at UC Berkeley that I want to get into. I'm learning this on the fly, so don't think I'm some great, conservation guru. I am far from it. It's a lot of learning I've got to do, and we're learning along the way.
but your intent and drive, that's what you need.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
the mindset, as we were talking about before.
That word. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on. I really, 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 it's an honor to have you on and to talk to you and to be able to be a part of what you're doing and to help you. And
So
yeah, we're gonna do everything we can to. Is that your 10 o'clock? Sorry.
no, I'm just going to mute you
Oh.
because it'll go off soon.
um, I know we're finishing up, but just one last thing before we go. I just wanted to just give you a chance. If you want to just say something, what's your takeaway? What do you want people to leave this with? Oh, someone posted, does a hose ask if it's worthy to carry water? That's great. Oh, you can't see the comment because there we go.
Uh, That's funny. My takeaway, if I were to leave anybody with anything, it's really, um, take we don't do enough downtime to self-reflect. We're,
Hmm.
in the United States, and I'm gonna say the people of this country are the hardest working people, and they have the biggest hearts. They really do. And it's, people visualize America as, woo, land of money, and everybody's,
Yeah, capitalism, right?
yeah. And we all work hard. People work hard to put their food on the table, and everything. But we don't take enough time, and that's one of the blessings of COVID, if people, is to just take time with your family. You see more people on the beaches, more people getting out. The coast, traffic jam on the coast. Take time to just do some self-reflection and honor what's coming up for you,
I
and
love it.
yeah,
Self-reflect,
yeah,
honor what's inside you. That's so great. That's perfect. And I agree 100% that that's one of the beautiful things. I mean, as horrible as the crisis was and is, it's
yes,
still ongoing, but it's just a lot of us a lot of us have a lot more time without commutes, right?
right,
Even that, I mean, that's a lot of time.
right.
So
People in this country they drive themselves so hard, and it's and yes, we want to achieve and everything, but also those moments, there's an inner voice that's saying, what, honor yourself as well, right? And that's my big thing, is to, I'm learning it. So,
awesome. Thank you so much. This
oh
has
my
been
God, thank
beautiful.
you. It's been a pleasure.
This has been incredible, and we're excited to see where you go. And again, anything that we can do to help you, just send us everything, and we'll post it up on our social as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.